Sometimes all you need is to take a step of faith. Welcome to yet another session. My name is Simon. Glad to have you back. Today we will share from Genesis chapter 2, verse 4 to 8. I'll read. This is the history of the heavens and the earth when they were created. In the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens, before any plant of the field was in the earth and before any herb of the field had grown. For the Lord God had not caused it to rain on the earth, and there was no man to till the ground. But a mist went up from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. Verse 7. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. Verse 8. The Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put man who he had formed. Verse 9. And out of the ground the Lord God made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. Please take note of the following. First, in verse 5, it tells us right after he created the heavens and the earth, there was not any plant of the field or any herb. Why? Same verse answers that question, that God had not caused it to rain on earth, and there was no man to till the ground. Secondly, in verse 6, a mist goes up and waters the face of the ground. Thirdly, in verse 7 and 8, God forms man and places him in the Garden of Eden. But I want you to take note something that's interesting here. Please pay attention in the sequence of events. In verse 8, it says God planted a garden in Eden. Then he put man in the garden. In verse 9, it says, and out of the ground the Lord God made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. So, God creates the earth in verse 4, preps the earth by watering it for what he has planned. That is verse 5. He creates man and he plants or seeds the Garden of Eden right after he creates man. But in verse 9, it tells us the seeds he had put in the ground in the Garden of Eden came out of the ground. That was right after he placed man in the Garden of Eden. A few things I'd like to point out today. God is very methodical. He has the end before the beginning. Nothing approaches him unawares or by surprise. Any plans he has for you, he will always create the right atmosphere or create the right ground for you beforehand. He will water the ground. He will equip you, then launch you into what he has planned for you. But sometimes, we may not always see the end result, but we have to know that he has already gone ahead of us, and all we need is faith. Remember, when Adam was placed in the Garden of Eden, God had already planted the garden, but nothing had come out of the ground yet. But in verse 9, right after he's placed, it tells us, out of the ground the Lord made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. Sometimes it's not until you step into that garden that you start seeing the result, the growth, the fruit. Many of us, myself included, we like to see and make sure everything is right. We try to make sense of every little detail before we take on a project. This is good in a way because you always have to do your homework. You have to prep and plan as much as possible. But we also have to understand that there are some things we cannot really figure out unless we are in the right place. God created you as a complete package. You are complete in him. That is Colossians 2:10. It tells us we are complete in him who is the head of principality and power. So He has placed everything in you that pertains to godly life through our knowledge of Him. So don't be afraid to step into what God is calling you to do. It's only when you take that step of faith that you see those seeds He planted in you start to sprout and you start to see those fruits. Be blessed. Sometimes all you need is